What's up, man?
What's good, man?
Hey, another episode of Code Talk. What's up, man? Let's see, who audio is that that's coming through? Another episode
Yours?
of Code Talk. Oh, let me see here.
You probably got a YouTube plan.
Yeah. I just nixed it just then. Hey, look, this live action tech support. You know what I'm saying? We have too many conversations about what we should do, and you know what I'm saying, technically speaking, when it come down to what's the best way to go live, get the information out, get the message out. What's up, Chris? So, man, how was your weekend?
Um, Busy. I use it busy and lazy.
Yeah.
I took advantage of some downtime, got a nap in, but I also, I do work that morning on Saturday and, just worked hard.
Yeah.
Worked up on some things, got behind on some other things. So, you shifting your focus from one thing to another.
Yeah.
Multitasking, as some people like to call it. That's what to do.
And it sounds like he's just handling business to me.
Yeah.
That's really what it come down to me, because like people try to put fancy terminology on stuff, and you know what I'm saying. And it's like, no, you just got to get up, check the block off, and you know what I'm saying, and actually get up and go do something. Man, look, I like being active the way that I am with some of this stuff. I like get my color coded pens out to figure out, you know what I'm saying, the next thing that we got to discuss, and you know what I'm saying, and make things make sense, you know. So today is one of those times where we got like a topic that has a lot of transitive value, no matter where it's discussed. And you brought up men of value, and I saw that, and I was like, it's some topics that I see we could deviate in a different direction on, but I think there's just so many other ways to go about having that discussion, because again, we always say there's no talking point out here that we hadn't already heard before, right? But we're just giving our spin on it based on our personal experiences as you know what I'm saying, young men, to like blue collar, to self-employed entrepreneurs, like whatever that spectrum is. I don't even have a definition for it just right now. But men of value typically are like that, right? There's like no one thing that we hang our hat on to say what we're good at. And I always say, we talked before of like, yo, this isn't even the thing that we're good at. This, you know what I'm saying, this thing that we talk about doing is this extra time we dedicate to have conversations in front of people. This isn't even the thing that we're good at. We're valuable for the people that that rely on us in our network, right? So we always start with definitions just in general in our conversations, right? Because if all things are true, define it the way that you would like to define
it. Men of value. I think that how can I put it?
Because it's your topic, but I know you want other people to have a discussion where you can learn from it. But what drove you to say, we got to talk about men of value? What was in your, I guess, your personal life at that moment in time when you said, bingo, this is what we're going to discuss?
Well, you hear about that. You hear the term high value man, right? That was something that was a big talking point, not too long ago. But I don't want to hit on that. I think that, and it might have also came from a talking point from another episode or something. I don't remember exactly where the thought process came from, but I think that part of it is it came from not wanting to just talk about high value men and those same talking points, but just men of value at the end of the day, what I strive to be is every day is a man of value. And I only really want to associate myself self with other men of value. I think that men of value have something to offer their network, and or whatever they choose to draw a circle around and protect. So, you know, I think it's a I think it should be not for everybody. But I think the world would be a better place if men sought out to be a man of value, a man of character, different things like that. So I just wanted to talk about it and kind of see what we were going to come up with, and then kind of sort of my of what a definition of what a man of value is. It would probably never just one thing. I would probably have to create a checklist of certain things. I think a man of value has a certain amount of discipline. I think a man of value has a certain amount of control over their life, over their tongue, over how they move. And what I mean by control is they're not moved by their emotions, but they're moved by logical decision making that has been well thought out. So and the list could go on and on and on. I don't think there's just one thing. I think that there's a combination of things. It's kind of like, who would you want to hang around, but not that. Somebody positive to kind of emulate, and then kind of sort of be not necessarily like that person, but like a bunch of great people, whatever. I don't even want to say that. Let me take all. Let me retract all
You,
that stuff
you
about
see,
somebody
you,
else.
you see what like in your life,
Mm-hmm.
like those are buzzwords that make you
Mm-hmm.
kind of like get into the conversation to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the more you start like after you say the word, after the brainstorm, and you're like, nah, it don't fit because
Yeah.
trying to find a way to make it somewhat PC and
Mm-hmm.
digestible because some people have been burnt out from the same topics over and over again,
Yeah.
right? But I think man of value is not about uh, the value that other people assign to him. I think a man of value is based on what he does to affect his environment in a positive way. Meaning
Mm-hmm.
that when you take somebody away, it hurts the community, right? In
Mm-hmm.
some way, shape, or form. Like you lose, like the community father figure, an elder, or something like that, right? It affects the community. You know what I'm saying? When you lose somebody, like I think that's what determines people of value or men of value to some degree too, because people die every day, but everybody's not the same contributor at every level. Nobody is, right? But there's some that rise to the top of that discussion faster than others based on what they do, and you know what I'm saying, and who's affected by them in a positive way. So man of value is really not about what's on his resume, but more about how do people benefit from that individual and their experience and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody doesn't have something to contribute or not necessarily in a space to contribute anything. And by space, that's whether it's resources, intellect, know-how, skill, a whole rabbit hole full of different descriptors, which is why like when you was trying to break down and figure out which one you think it makes sense. Yeah, like discipline, discernment, and logic, all of that stuff is just basic becoming thing. Like most jobs, you won't hire you or keep you on there if you don't have any of these things anyway. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really a basic thing. I think what man of value is, what distinguishes you from other men of value. Because everybody believes they got something to contribute. Because again, all things are true. But it's a lot of people that ain't done nothing since high school, fam.
Mm-hmm.
And just because you hung around and didn't get in the way, you know what I'm saying, doesn't necessarily mean that you've done something that's valuable either.
I think your value also comes down to um, your clients, and are they buying? You know what I mean? And your clients can be your family, your friends, your employees, you know what I mean? You know, I know I know, you know, part of it is, you know, a certain amount of self-awareness that we have and we want to feel like that we're adding value. But I think at the same time, people people will help determine, or people can determine your value too, because if ain't nobody buying what you're selling, is what you selling of any value? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
you know, so people can be I would say that people can be a reference point, you know what I mean, for understanding value. I think you can look at it as, okay, well, if I'm doing X, Y, and Z and nobody's buying, then maybe I need to switch up. Maybe I'm not of as value as I think I am. You know what I mean? So I think we can use that as, you know, one way. We can use other people as one way to kind of um assess ourselves to see, you know, if we are really adding value, or if we just, you know, or if we need to make adjustments. I'll put it like that.
Yeah,
We don't mean that we're wrong. It just may mean that something is not working right now. It don't necessarily mean it's anything negative. It could be. It could be an attitude. It could be our ego. It could be you got the wrong person in the wrong position. You know, maybe not using that person effectively. It could be maybe you don't know as much as you think you do. You know what I mean? Maybe our own ego can be in the way. You know, but I do think that, you know, in a sense, sometimes people, you can use people as a reference point to determine value. They're not the one stop shop. You know, I think that, you know, you look at, you know, the type of person you want to be, and, you know, value is an eye beholder to a certain extent.
and like that's why you were talking about like, uh, like you can kind of gauge other people to kind of tell where or if you want to base it like off of clients, you know what I'm saying? Because easy
Mhm.
when it come down to discussion about value, you can easily equate that for trading services, whether they got to do with money, bartering, or whatever, right? Something of value got to be useful, right?
Mhm.
So I wrote down, like you said, it's an indicator, right? So one of my favorite sayings is that when people bring up a conversation that's rooted in exceptionalism, because they endeavor to make their point, you know what I'm saying, more valid than the overall point of the dialogue. There's a difference between a debate and a dialogue, right? So when you mention indicators, it triggered me, and I was instantly saying indicators are not absolute, but they are absolutely indicators. So
Mhm.
that fits when you're saying that's a metric that you can use to try to like steer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
gonna give you.
Yeah.
It's not all inclusive. It's not. It's like you can't gauge everything you have to offer off one person's experience with you, one person's interaction with you, or and vice versa for any.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? For the sake of just saying it, because even though we're saying these things in a singular direction, they are really a double entendre, because everything that you say that you're responsible for, there's somebody out there equally receptive to the way that you think. So you have to use discernment and everything else, because just because that person can take in what you're saying doesn't mean that that's the person that's meant to absolutely be in your purview. You know what I'm saying? Your responsibility. Oh man, we got Mr. Lauderdale. He done popped in. I know he hear me right now. Hey, Tony, you better get somewhere to sit down. You got that camera lined up where it can sit still. What you got for us? What you want to tell the people? Uh-oh, lost him that fast. But he'll be back. But we're talking about indicators though, right? And yeah, you can kind of get a gauge of how people value your input. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Because it's like this, like you can go out and buy, like, you know, that statement is true as well. Value is in the eye of the beholder. You can take somebody to go out there, and they can go out there and they buy a $300 pair of shoes, right? A whole bunch of people will buy a $300 pair of shoes, but everybody ain't gonna buy a $300 pair of shoes. You know what I mean? Some people gonna feel like, man, this is too much. I ain't gonna do it. So value is in the eye of the beholder, or the person who's buying whatever product.
Mhm. Well, that's true. You know, I think that value is really based off of a wide spectrum of what's available to that particular individual too. You
Yeah.
know, like somebody that shops at Ross probably can't see the value of shopping at, I don't know, what I'm saying, some high-end clothing store, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because jeans are jeans to somebody that doesn't live in that particular space where they gotta have something, what I'm saying, that's eye popping or something in the designer spectrum, right? But then that's the difference when your clothes don't matter and then people still see what you have to offer. That's the difference, right? It goes that to me, this is a conversation where you unpack everything that glitters isn't gold,
Mm-hmm.
which is why, like I fashion my podcast is about accountable masculinity, right? Because we talk about how many things are right and wrong in our society, things that we need to improve on, whether it be relationships, mentorship, or anything of that nature, right? Well, you can't rely on the people that have not built anything, not led anything, to be in those spaces that are valuable spaces, no less, and to go there and learn it. We need people that have already done it, that are that have leadership value, because everybody doesn't have leadership value that are men.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's just a fact. All men aren't leaders. Just like all everybody's not going to be a spouse. Everybody's not going to be a football player. People can go play the sport, or even if you're talented, just because you're in a certain space with other talented people does not make you as valuable as the other people that might be more popular. They can have less talent than you, but they have something else that makes them more valuable in certain spaces than you. I had a friend of mine, actually my uncle Troy. He was like, there was a guy that was trying to get access to a particular party, and he made $30 million a year, but because what I'm saying, the people didn't allow him in, his money didn't even get him in the room. You feel me? Like, because when
Mm-hmm.
everybody got money, we're not talking about money. We're talking about energy. We're talking about intangibles. We're talking about trade and work, and how, how can we capitalize on where we are? You know what I'm saying? We don't even want to just be around people for the sake of just saying we was around them. We want to do business with one another. You know what I'm saying? We want to grow and things of that nature. And I tell you right now, this is bringing us all back. Your value determines what type of conversations you have too,
Mm-hmm.
because you can only have what you can afford. And it ain't got nothing to do with money. You know what I'm saying? Just like I gave you that scenario where a guy was making $30 million a year, and just because he has status, that don't mean his status is compatible with every place he goes to.
Yeah. I know. I
So,
probably know a whole bunch of. I don't know none, but I probably could name some people who are celebrities and multimillionaires, but I wouldn't invite them to my house.
man, so yeah, for real, yeah,
They're
exactly.
not. They're not valuable to me. You know.
You know what, man? I just thought of something, right? Instead of saying value, right? Maybe we need to introduce a more neutral, flexible phrase, because value goes right in there with table. What do you bring? You know what I'm saying? What do you bring to the table? The same cyclic conversations. What about this? Status compatibility.
Perhaps.
You see where I'm going with that? What do you think it means when you hear that?
I'm looking at a I'm looking at a comparable term because I'm looking at status, and I'm still thinking that you look at status and value, your rank. It's a ranking system.
It is.
Even with value, I mean, value is a ranking system. There's certain things that we place more value on than others. Um, yeah.
Well, here's my thought when I say status compatibility, right? We just talked about the word value does not necessarily afford you access to every single thing. because
Mm-hmm.
all values aren't created equally, right? The word value is designed to show that there's a separation between people. But that word also has a level of elitism to it, to the wrong ear. Um, and I will say this right here. I came up with status compatibility
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of us have status, but all of our status doesn't work well with everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
You might have your own money, your own networks, and everything else, and you think that that's enough, but it's not always enough. Hey, go ahead and mute the YouTube, Tony. I'm getting in your business. Nah, but like all statuses are not created equally. You know what I'm saying? Because that's part of the problem when we talk about, for the sake of conversation, we're not talking about women in general, but where they value themselves is different than what men value them for. Correct? Like you'll have some people, some women that go on a corporate run, um, and they think that their accolades and achievements and financial accomplishments are on par with somebody that doesn't that's done all that stuff already, has time to themselves and flexibility and move around. And it's not the same thing, you know what I'm saying, to both parties. But both parties believe that their vision of what's valuable to them is absolutely true. So status allows you to have a conversation with somebody, you know what I'm saying, to see if what you got going on is compatible. Like how many times have we seen where um, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, and Mark Cuban don't all agree on something, right? They all billionaires. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? So after the money conversation is done, you're really just talking about philosophy. You know what I'm saying? So so status compatibility is about, you know, how how fluid is your philosophy in life to where you can interact with other people and be able to learn from it and be able to respect somebody else and be able to submit to a situation so you can actually take in more information and change your value too.
See, I see what Chris wrote in there,
Yeah,
useful
that's it.
versus value. So here's why I do like value. There are people who add value, but they add it in a negative way. Think about how much I'm just being real.
Mm-hmm.
Think about I'm gonna use what term Chris like to use. Think about the Pookies and the Ray Rays, right?
All right.
They add a lot of value to our community. And regardless, whatever you want to think about it now, a lot of them Pookies and Ray Rays bringing a um whole bunch of babies, which is good, bad, or indifferent. It's um what's the word? Not creating population, it's expanding populations, I guess. Um and if they're out there slinging and they're on the corner, good, bad, or dim, they're adding value to a whole bunch of crackheads. You know
They
what I
valuable to
mean?
somebody.
You know what I mean? They a lot of them, a lot of them take care of their mom until they go to jail. You know what I mean? They feed a lot of people. I'm just saying, regardless, even though the money is coming from maybe an illegal way, there's still some that they add value, good or bad. You know what I mean? They add value to the person who wants, you know what I mean, that next hit, you know?
I'll use a different example. Cleveland, the Cleveland Cavaliers needed LeBron James
Mhm.
both times. When he left Cleveland, you heard people complaining about the economics, the bars drying up, you know what I'm saying? Because he was valuable to the city, you know what I'm saying, of
Mhm.
Cleveland. That's the difference. Like when you're away, do people produce or do they just keep going? Do things stop when you're not around? Or do they, you know what I'm saying, do they complete? Do they get done? Or some people are more valuable because they're just not around.
Or is it a system? So let's think
Or
about it
it's
like
a
this.
system. Yeah.
Because you think about when we was in the military, no matter how valuable somebody thought they were, when them jokers PCS, the unit kept on going.
Kept on going.
You know what I
You know,
mean?
and that's relative to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
See, the doctrine in which I think doctrine is key to defining how you value yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you gotta have something. You gotta have code. You know what I'm saying? Let me expand it real quick just so y'all can see it. You gotta have code. Okay, it's just the bottom line. If you don't have no code, it doesn't matter what you think your value is. You know what I'm saying? Your value is for the moment. It's for that item that you focused on. You know, for that moment in time. And generally speaking, if you ain't got no code, you usually focus on something selfish anyway. So, generally speaking, people that are out for themselves are not generally valuable or useful for some other people. But again, this is why we talk about status compatibility. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some great electronics out there, but all electronics don't talk to each other. All of them don't sync up the same way. You know, there's some great I don't know, cars, and maybe the difference in the car is the style. Somebody might prefer this style over here to this brand. Some people don't care about spending $20,000 more for a different type of effect. You know what I'm saying? So like what what you give your time to also reflects your value as well. Because anything you give your energy to is an investment of your time. So if you spend a lot of your resources engaged in unhealthy conflicts, your value is going to be defined on what you participate in. Problems, solutions, and opportunities. Human beings create one of those three things, right? So if you have if you're valuable to people that like problems, you're probably good at creating problems. If you're valuable to people that need solutions, you probably are the gatekeeper for solutions. You know what I'm saying? And opportunities. Somebody in that mix has a choice to make to decide what they want to be valuable, you know what I'm saying, where they want to be valuable. Because if you lived and died and nobody ever remembers your name, did you ever exist?
You got over there, Chris?
First off, hi. What's
Hello.
going on, fellas?
What's up?
We're speaking on men of value and what that would actually be.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I guess a man of value would be a man that's useful and that's hard to replace. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like you brought up the LeBron James uh scenario, which is true. Without LeBron James, the Cleveland Cavaliers wouldn't have that championship. He was valuable, and when he left, they the highest they've been is a fourth seed.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess a man of value is a man that it would take a lot to replace, and he's useful to everybody outside of him and his circle.
I think not easily replaced is the most direct way, you know, because you just can't trip over, like somebody else that has the same talents, or you can't just, what I'm saying, just swap one person for another. Like all three of us do something completely different. We got a few things that we do the same, but if I step into the space where you're an expert at, just because I know you doesn't mean I'm inherently good at something. You know what I'm saying? I still need to come talk to you about it. Just like if you were stepping into my space, and if it was about something that's actively in my wheelhouse, I wouldn't expect you to come tell me how to do the thing that I've already known how to do. That's when you get to actually show that you're capable of being coachable and receptive. I think men of value are also very coachable and receptive. Men that are not valuable, men, generally aren't receptive, aren't coachable, hard to work with, have more complaints than solutions, provide more problems than opportunities.
So I think that there is levels to it, because there are some people that add value to my life, but they can easily be replaced. You know, so I think that although they may add value, they add a certain level of value. No disrespect, but like if Chris never showed up on Elevator Dialogue again, he adds great value, but Chris can be replaced at the same time. The same
Mhm.
thing as when we was in the military. This ain't on you. I was just saying, Chris, my dude. But the same thing when we was in the military. Same thing. You have a great NCO, adds a lot of value to the company. In 3 years, the joker out. You know what I mean? So I think that we're all replaceable, regardless of how high of a level our valuable is. Um, and I don't want to use the term high value man. I really don't want to use that. I'll just say that I think that there are levels of valuable men. And I think that we all probably fit somewhere on that level. Some guys may, rise to the occasion more and may offer more value than, just whatever. So like now, if Chris can do what he does now and edit videos really good, he's a lot harder to replace. I
Absolutely.
think and I think that's where maybe levels of it may come in. You know what I mean? So
That's
like
why I
now,
said
I'm just
not
like,
easily replaceable.
if I want to get Chris now, he can edit videos and he can spit on the mic.
Yeah.
So he offers a little bit more value than um just his great verbal skills and different things like that. So
Is it safe to say that skills separate men of value?
I would, right off the top of the head, I would initially say yes. Um, quick 46, almost 47 years, right off the top of my head, I would say yes. I think
Mhm.
How,
that's I think that's a I mean, when you have more skills, you can pay more bills, you know?
Hey man, look,
especially when you have a skill that is useful on a
Valuable skill.
massive scale. Yeah, especially if
Yeah.
you have a
A,
skill
a
that's useful on a
usable, a
massive scale.
useful skill.
so like again, skills separate men of value because that's where Chris came in and said you got to be useful, right? And what
Not
came
just useful, Vic. Not just useful. Useful to everyone around you. Useful to
useful?
everybody outside of yourself and your immediate circle.
Absolutely, and I got it. So, which means you have to be good at something, right? So there's a big difference in the value of man when you're good at something or not good at all. So there's always going to be levels to it. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's why men of value have to submit to mentorship if they want to be better. We always inherently believe that somebody is better than us at whatever it is that we're doing. Because we only got here off of our own understanding. You know what I'm saying? Or the understanding that you prayed for. Okay? And then when you get there to that level where people can see, you know what? I can help that person. Then that's when you start seeing people invest into you, asking you certain questions at a different frequency where you don't have to dumb yourself down or you don't have to bite your tongue without people feeling like you're directing whatever you're saying at them because it's coming from a place of value. You see what I'm saying? So there's a bit, you could tell where people are speaking from a hurt place when they're talking about something. Can you not? So a lot of times the difference between a person being valuable, skillful, is just the discernment of what they do with those skills, you know? Because let's say you pretty talented, but you got spotty, I guess, attendance at work, right? You could do something. You could knock things out. It's a lot of things that your shop can put on your back and know that you can carry the load or whatever, right? But you've made yourself somewhat indispensable and being completely dependent, right? Now, some people like that. Some people want everything on them so they can get all of the credit. So at that level, you start seeing that there's a difference between people that do things for selfish gains, use their skills and status for selfish outcomes. And the difference in those people is that somebody is capable of making a sacrifice on behalf of the greater good that fits into the conversation that Chris is describing about you have to be useful to other people outside of yourself, right? Because we've always said, and most of the philosophy we connect on is that men of value have to be good at something, or else why would anybody call you? Like, who calls somebody that they got to carry, feed, and employ and still pay? Where's the deal in that? You see what I'm saying? So amongst men, we have that same conversation about bad choices in women, right? You wouldn't want to go out there and get somebody else's kids and drag them along with you, right? And make room for somebody that might have a skill, but does the potential for success outweigh what you got in front of you? You know what I'm saying? And you could really only answer that question if that's based on your personal resources, not theirs. So I think value is absolutely relative to what you can affect, what you can afford, who benefits from you, and and why they benefit. When you start going down to who, what, where, when, and why, then you kind of understand where you fit at in other people's spaces. Because a lot of times we walk into spaces, just human American Western ideas. We walk into spaces too often and think that they supposed to be able to read our mind. They're supposed to know what we want. They're supposed to know our mood. You know what I'm saying? We walk into spaces where English isn't even the first language. And we get mad when we don't hear somebody speaking English and we ask them to speak English. But a man of value will go read the room, write some stuff down, ask some questions, do a little bit of research just so they don't offend. You know what I'm saying? So those are other things. Behavioral observations tell you what type of value you have too. Because if you overreacting to every single thing as a man, I don't want to be around no dude like that. You know what I'm saying? There's a big difference when the pilot says oops than when the 3-year-old says oops.
Yeah, I think as you were speaking and I was looking at this, you mentioned fellow man. Right before I read that, I was thinking about the wolf pack mentality or the group mentality.
Hit the sound. Hit the sound.
Huh?
You're supposed to hit the wolf pack sound when you.
Oh yeah. You said y'all ain't like my sound no more, man.
I didn't say that. No.
I ain't like the I ain't think y'all like the sound no more.
Hey man, you know it's a new sound every time I hear it. Right then, it sounded like the wolf had an orgasm.
It did.
Oh wow.
It did. He did. But yeah, so I'm thinking about the how can I put it? I'm thinking about like the group aspect of this. And man, he didn't took the other comment down. Throw the other comment back up there.
Which one? Which one was it?
Number 3.
Oh, okay. You want to look at this one right here?
Rule number 3. Rule number 3. What made me think about the wolf pack and made me think about the group. You said must avoid misrepresenting fellow man. I think, the wolf pack, if you look at it from a whatever lens, the wolf pack wants to be strong. And sometimes they're not always willing to hold up dead weight, especially men who are really moving and shaking. Like there's a point to where I think we want to mentor and help. And I think there's a point to where we let go because those men are not representing us the way we would like to be,
Yep.
And I guess I kind of say all of that to say is that, I think the group can add a certain level of value to a person too. You know what I mean? Like it's been me, you, me, Vic, Coach, and Antoine. They were the 4 people. They're like the nucleus of Elevated Dialogue, right? Chris is on there every single week. We all 4 want to rock with Chris.
Yep.
So, but everybody who may have came on the show, we may not have all wanted that person to be on there every single week. Not that they were bad, but that maybe all together things may not have worked. So you add value because of what you do for the whole group. You see what I'm saying? So we're all in this together collectively, and Vic talked about it before, how one person can affect everybody. So we all have our individual brands, and then we collectively work on Elevated Dialogue together to build that brand as well. Code Talk, across the table from Chris, Empowering Perspectives, EJ's Gym, Antoine Christopher, all these other different platforms that we all work together as a group to try to help build each other up and grow together. So, and if you are not for us, then you're not part of the team, we may look at you as bringing less value. So we going to eventually weed you out or tell you to go. Not you in particular, just
The
the
behavior.
situation in general. Yeah,
It's
just
the
in
behavior.
general, speaking in generals. So I think that the group also has a certain level of value determination when it comes to that. Because like I said, if you're not adding value to the wolf pack, if you can't hunt, you know what I mean? Like you can't hunt, you can't fight, you falling asleep at nighttime when you're supposed to be on guard
Somebody,
duty while the women eating and
yeah.
stuff like
Nah, we can't go with you.
you can't roll with you. You because here's the thing. If you're
We
not
become
adding
a liability to the group.
you become a liability.
Look, how many times have you watched like military movies where somebody gets pinned down under fire, right? They want to bring another team in, so another team of shooters in via helicopter, but they shooting down helicopters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you bring in your team, the helicopter gets shot down, and they keep shooting them down. Now you got to keep using resources to go get people out of a hostile environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing. It's like if you're gonna bring, like, we criticize football teams all the time by the people they're going to get. They talk about Christian McCaffrey, and they're like, oh, he's hurt again. Certain players just stay hurt again. You know what I'm saying? They got great potential, but until it hits the stat sheet, they just a liability. If they know more about injury, if they know more about everything but the thing that they're good at, they're a liability. We talk when we, like, for instance, let me give you. I'm gonna say a name, and I want you to say the first thing that comes to mind. Let me give you. You got a pen? Anybody need a pen? Whatever. I actually want you to write down 4 or 5 words, or however many words come to you. Little exercise, right? I'm gonna name some people. I'm gonna think of the names as I go. The first name is Tristan Thompson.
Oh shoot. Hold on, let me grab a pen.
Put it in the private chat.
Yeah, you can do that. You can put it in the private chat. You can write
Right,
over
put
there.
it in there for you, Chris.
All right. So that's one. All right. I'm gonna say, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
The baby. The rapper. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
and to offset it.
Offset?
No. I'm not gonna say offset like that.
No.
The last one I'm gonna use, since I'm using recent history, right? Queen Elizabeth. All right. Now, off the top of your head, give me 3 words that come to mind for Tristan Thompson.
Is he married?
Marital status.
No, I'm
Let's do it.
asking, is he married? That's a clarification question for me.
I don't know. Then that's the point. Like, if you need clarification and you don't know, you see my point?
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next question you got?
Because
the
I was
first
gonna say, is he? I was gonna say something about cheating, but I'm like, if he's not married, then I wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, the first thing that I thought of when you said Tristan Thompson was Kardashian.
Yep. Thank you. Khloe Kardashian. You think more about Khloe than you do Christian, than you do Tristan playing basketball.
That was the next thing.
Do
I
you
wrote
know how,
basketball.
big man.
you see how far down the list you have to go before you get to basketball? Okay, again, a man with a skill that he got his name because of his ability to play basketball, right? And he playing at a high level. He's been to the finals. You know what I'm saying? He played with LeBron, whatever. But we know more about the Kardashians than we need to based off of his name. So how valuable is he to a team based on just the things that we're discussing? Like, you have to consider all of that when you bring somebody in. If they're good at something, how do you manage that, right? Let's move on. I'll give you 10 seconds, right? I'm gonna start doing a time thing. I don't want you to think about this too long. The baby. Go.
Walmart.
What else you got? Shooter.
Shooter and rapper.
North Carolina. Isn't he from North Carolina?
Yep. Mm-hmm. So the first thing you said was Walmart, because he ended up shooting somebody, you know what I'm saying, to defend himself. He got into a shooting situation. I don't even know all of the details, but I know he caught a body. Then you already had Walmart and Shooter before we got to the fact that he even making music. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So is he valuable? Yes, to some people. But it just depends on the topic of the conversation. That's why status compatibility is key, because just because he raps doesn't mean that he can get into all of the same spaces that other rap. There's cliques within cliques. You know, so you don't have a universal one size fit all that everybody else cares about. Everybody don't want to hear what you got to say, you know? Yep. So it doesn't even matter how much status you have. Just like you said, there's some people you wouldn't even invite to your house. I know plenty of millionaire cats that, you know, like, we don't have nothing to talk about, you know?
Like, I don't like Tristan Thompson. Tristan Thompson can't come to my house.
You see what I'm saying?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like, he might be cool, but like, I have no reason to invite him over to my house and break bread with me.
No, at all.
He had value to somebody, but he won't be over here.
Mm-hmm. So, and then the last one, Queen Elizabeth. Colonizer.
The queen.
Colonizer.
Colonizer.
And you see, like, when you start with one word, it changes the frequency of the words that you can't, like, when you start off on a negative, it rarely is pivoted by a positive. You start off on a negative, there's 3 or 4 other things that go behind it to support the negative overall assumption, right? So how many times has somebody said, oh man, I thought you was stuck up, I thought you was this, I thought you was that, and it's all because they observed. But until they participate with you, they don't know how you think. They don't know how you communicate. They don't know the point. They don't know your vision. Because it's a lot of people that will listen to you say something way differently than they will read it from you. There's a lot of people that will treat a text message different than email, even if it's the same words. Because people generally always have this notion that don't shoot the messenger. But sometimes you don't have the right value to deliver a certain message and expect for it to be heard, being heard and considered, you know what I'm saying, reasonably, and actually have your ideas applied is something. Those are layers in itself too. Because how many times you talk to somebody and they're like, I've read this book, I've studied this, I've been waiting for years to do this, and then they got all the knowledge, but they never pull the trigger. What's their value just because they was receptive to the same information?
And see, that's why Leonidas kicked that dude in the hole in 300 when he came to Sparta.
Hey, look, you can, at some point, the leader got to do something to show it's not just talk. Because up until that point, that person is just who everybody looks towards until he gives them reason not to trust him, not to do, until he gives them reason to violate their own principles. You see what I'm saying? Because like when somebody goes rogue from the wrong chair, it changes the way everybody else sees that chair. I mean, that's valid arguments right now about like what was, people like, you remember when Bush used to be like regarded as the worst president ever?
Which one?
Pick one. That's why I just said Bush, generally speaking. People pick people. Somebody said Clinton was the worst. Somebody said Ford was the worst.
You can't fool me. You can't fool me.
Hey, I'm waiting for somebody to throw a shoe at you.
I know, right? And Joker could not spit that thing out.
Oh man,
he said, "Fool me once."
Shame on you. Shame on me. Well, you can't fool me 3 times.
Yeah.
but that's my point. See, when I said George Bush, you see how he started laughing?
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time, that was the most ridiculous thing that somebody could have said. I remember when George Bush II said major combat operations have ended in Iraq. And it was like May of 2003. And I'm like, how? While I'm sitting in Baghdad. What you mean is ended? I'm here. My homeboys are here and everything else. How can it end if we're here? But in his mind, what's major to him is different from what's major to the person that's on the ground. You know what I mean? Like for him, it's like major might be, well, we didn't have to bring in, you know what I'm saying, a different aircraft element. We were able to handle it all in-house. So it's a big deal, right? For him to make that assessment off the resources that he built his plan with, right? As goofy as that plan might sound to other people. But there's levels to this, again, where there's a big difference when the pilot says oops and a 3-year-old says oops. It's a big difference when you're late for an appointment versus a doctor being late for a critical surgery. There's levels to every single thing. So I kind of look at it like, what are people communicating to let someone know that they are not like them? And once you recognize that somebody's not like you, do you have a space for humility to say, can I learn from this person? And can I listen to them long enough to where they can show me something? Because at this stage, we don't believe a whole lot of different people, right? So we have to take people face value. That's what you should be doing, even more so now. So it's up to us to try to create that type of conversation where transparency is paramount. You know what I'm saying? Because if you want to be seen as the person that you actually are, believe to be, at some point, the only thing that's going to speak for you is your work. Plenty of people talking right now, but what are you doing?
True that.
Hear
There
what
are a lot of.
said Chris.
Let's see
Say
what
that
we got.
again.
We said because we valued his mess. I guess Marianne Graham was talking about me mentioning one of the presidents. Yeah, because look, there's some people out there that think he's the best thing smoking. Whatever president is, there's a group of people that think he was the best thing smoking. Good, bad, and indifferent. You know what I'm saying? That's why I say all things are true. Because somebody can get a list of things, and when it comes down to it, you can only pick between certain options. Some's not gonna make the cut, and some things ain't deal breakers like everybody else want them to be. Like racism is deal breakers for a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? And for a lot of people, it's not. Feminism is a deal breaker for a lot of people. For some people, it's not. So we skew value based on that too. Alex Jones was valuable to people. Crazy enough as it sounds, he was valuable to people. And it just hits different depending on the audience and depending on what that audience wants from that person. And again, going back to what Chris said, you got to be useful and you got to be valuable to other people outside of yourself.
Be useful, Chris.
Man, let's let Chris run his mouth for a minute because I know he always had
I'm over here waiting on.
Yeah.
You pop on here. You might pop on here just to look at you.
Come on, yeah. Like I like when he come on so he can talk. You know,
See,
pop on just he want to pop on, just be cute because he's the young one.
See, there y'all go.
That's what it is. Pop
See,
on, be cute.
The thing is, this is why I would rather use the word useful than value, because value has turned into a buzzword since it became a thing, since the late Kevin Samuels coined the term high value. It's become a big thing. But a lot of people never looked at his underlying message when it came to being valuable, which is, in order to be valuable, you have to be useful to other people outside of yourself and your circle. And it has nothing to do with money. Money is a tool to get you there, but money doesn't dictate value. I know a lot of cats out here that got bread that are useless. You understand what I'm saying? So when I look at value, I look at what's going on around you, and is what going on around you affecting the outside in a positive manner to make me even want to be a part of it. You're saying I never looked at a man's pockets when it came to value. I just, okay, you just got a lot of money. Like rappers, entertainers, things, they have a lot of money, so I guess they're valuable, but I wouldn't look to them to attempt to aspire to be something unless they're doing something outside of the entertainment that they're getting paid to, you know what I'm saying, that they're getting paid to show. So I guess that's just my rant. Like, a lot of people place too much emphasis on money when it comes to value instead of the utility that money allots that person, if that makes any sense.
I don't know. I'm thinking. I could be wrong. But I think without money, you can only add a limited amount of value. And this is where it goes back into the levels of it again. I think sometimes the more money you have, the more value you can add. I think if you have resources, it allows you to be in spaces where you can make bigger impact. I don't know why I'm going back to the military again, but you know, for some reason I'm going back to it. So we have like enlisted people and then like NCOs and then we have officers, right? So there's this mindset if you're an NCO that I want to be down there and I want to be working and grinding with my soldiers, right? You may only have 5 soldiers, but if you're the commander of the company or that lieutenant of that platoon, you may have 40 dudes in there that you're in charge of. So your impact, even though you're not maybe adding as much value as that platoon sergeant or that squad leader, you're the one who you're where the buck stops. You're where all the decisions are made. So even though you're not there on the ground making those decisions, everything stops and starts with you. And it may be a bad analogy for someone who are not familiar with the military, but you know, it could be the same thing said with the boss. You know, if you're a manager of 15 people, you know, versus a a regular manager who just may be in charge of 3 people. You know, you don't have to worry about your 3 people, you just one of them versus the guy at the top who manages the 15. He has a different level of value. You know what I mean? Because that's where they make all the decisions for everybody up underneath them, you know, versus so I think a lot of it you said is value and it is, I don't know, I think I kind of spun off from where I wanted to go. Get PTSD. Oh,
Yeah.
PTSD, boy. Boy,
Hey,
how my mind will shut down and reset in a minute. And it just did it. So
you
it
just
is what
buffering.
it is.
That's all. You gonna make your point in a minute. You just
Yeah.
buffering.
It'll come
So,
back to me.
so one of the things that as you was talking, I was writing down some words. Right. You talked about money sometimes, well, money and resources being necessary in order to actually exact your value. Sometimes, you
But
know.
can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead. Go for it.
Are money and resources synonymous?
Not necessarily, because again, you could just have a person that is is in a position, maybe that doesn't pay a whole lot of money, but has status, placement, and access. That's what I was looking for. Placement and
Yeah.
access also give you value, but it's plenty of people that have placement and access. They don't necessarily make a whole lot of money, but they got the ear of the person you need to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
They see the individual you need to bump into, you know. So it's like how
And
many
if
times?
they had money, they wouldn't be in that position to be
Yeah,
connected with that person too. So yeah. I
yeah.
get that.
Like for instance, like a White House press correspondent. They got designated staff personnel that who whole mission is to go back and forth to the White House, right? Listen to the pressers, ask questions, document the event, and get the hard questions asked, right? And you ever notice like when if they have a situation where the person at the podium doesn't like the question and they start talking to the reporter on a first name basis, it's because they've had placement and access with each other. You know what I'm saying? They can kind of predict. It's like, hey, look, I want you to call on me or something like that, and I'm be able to ask this question. That's placement and access. You know, somebody has to grant you an opportunity to get into a space like that. You don't just fill out a job application. You know, decide to be a White House press correspondent. How many times we've seen in contracting or even just duty positions where the person's already been selected and they just open it up, you know what I'm saying, for the sake of conversation, but the person they already
Formalities.
identified. It's just a formality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we get
Rooney
caught up
Rule.
yeah, the Rooney Rule. Sometimes we get caught up in just formalities and thinking that that person earned that. But come on, the Emmys, the Grammys, you don't think these people already know that they get an award? They own the committee. They already in the conversations. They know what's going to happen before it happens. No different than local politicians that manipulate laws so they can go do their private investing at certain levels, right? We see that all the time because if they're going to go legislate a law on behalf of something, they're going to do it because they can benefit from it, because they already know how they can manipulate the outcome down the line. Somebody saw the second and third order effects of a bad decision or a good decision, because they went through a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of game planning, and reverse engineering before they presented something that was articulate enough to get the audience engaged. And then they make the audience obligated. And then then at that point, the audience carries the narrative at that point. You feel me? So all you got to do is just get the right seed. That's what they talk about planting seeds, right? All people plant seeds, but all seeds don't grow.
Thanks.
Somebody said, "What's the solution?" This isn't a problem. Like the solution is recognizing that there isn't a problem. There's boundaries. There's levels to this, right? Everybody is not meant to do everything that everybody else does. If everybody became a CEO or somebody in a corporate space and nobody does blue collar work, at some point we're gonna have a problem. If you have an imbalance at any point, unless the environment adjusts with the people automatically, but that's unheard of. People have to adapt to the environment or change the environment themselves, right? Like when we say art imitates life, but then we surprised when we hear certain types of lyrics in certain types of music. But art imitates life. They're not making the music up and then life is reflecting it. At some point, it's a symbiotic relationship, between the two. So sometimes we cause the thing that we're participating in because we're not focused, right? The difference in that is the people that are of a certain value, that have a certain responsibility, can put their foot down, decide that they're going to be the bad guy to take all the negative criticism for anything that you're about to say. But if it's the right thing to say and the right thing to do and the right example to project, that person can't stop themselves from doing the right thing, just like some people can't stop themselves from their vices or whatever else, because at that moment in time, when you embrace that as your ultimate outcome, everything you do between that is just par for the course. So it's about being a man of value is about where do you direct your energy, you know what I'm saying, and recognizing which problems you can solve and which problems are just kind of like built in, just a formality, right? We're going to always disagree on money, entertainment, athletes, where we should be getting information from, who should we be paying attention to, where our opinion is valued and where it's not valued, But ultimately, we all want a simple outcome in life, just like on the theme song with Cheers. Sometimes you just want to go where everybody knows your name. You know what I'm saying? You want to go where your respect is reciprocated. That's ultimately.
I'm always glad you came.
And you're always glad you came. You see what I'm saying? So the solution is recognizing that there's not a problem all the time. Sometimes it's just the way it is. It's just capitalism, unhealthy competitions that all of us have participated in to some degree. We are looking at the residue of that mismanaged energy. You know what I'm saying? To the point where we're in our 40s saying, man, how did I survive that? Or now we're working instead of, questioning our own survival. We're having conversations like this to show that this is just really a mindset shift. Our parents didn't get to a comfortable enough position at the age that we are right now to have the conversations that we've been able to have in just the last year. So our parents had to be valuable to some degree, and maybe not to the specificity in which you wanted. That's your own poor expectation management. You know what I'm saying? To think that your parent is supposed to know exactly what you should be doing right now at this page in your life story. How?
Impossible.
So sometimes you have to pay your value forward. You have to give your idea. Sometimes you got to put your resources in place of somebody else that can do more with it than you can. And that's what makes you valuable too. Which goes to rule number 3. Again, let me go pull that back up. Highlight that. Here we go. This is the part right here. See, when and add more value to the conversation where Marianne said, "What's the solution?" Decentralized leadership amongst men allows us to tell the difference between a leader and a follower. And sometimes the decision-making point where you ask what's the solution, the difference at that point, the solution is going to come from a leader. The follower is going to complain. The follower is going to ask, what's the solution? The leader is already working on it, has a strategy implemented to go forward. So at any point where we can't answer the question as quickly as it was asked, then that's the point where you recognize you got a cap on how much information that you can actually, give to somebody. And so, again, we over here focused on leadership piece, right? And this is, again, going down the list. Here we go to rule number 4 of accountable masculinity. Boom. Okay, let's say you recognize that there's a problem. Then you ask, what's the solution? We already talked about rule number 1, men focusing on men. Rule number 3, decentralized leadership, knowing when you need to step up and step back. And then rule number 4, if you're living a life of service towards your community and others, and you're acquiring skills and impart knowledge along the way because you're credible and capable of both mentoring and being mentored, you must be receptive and coachable. So the solution is knowing when you don't know the answer.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know the answer.
A lot of people don't know the answer. And the whole point of that is knowing when to disengage. Like if you ask for what's an answer and somebody gives you a canned answer, it's going to leave too much room for it to be picked apart. So you make a decision that's trigger dependent, meaning that what does the situation provide for you to do? Because like you might know the answer, but what if you don't have a resource? Are you still right or wrong?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variables that go into it. Like we have lived complex lives up until a point where it's kind of disrespectful to ask a very simple, look for a simple solution to a complex understanding. Not necessarily a problem, a complex understanding. Because we all have different journeys that play along certain frequencies, intertwine, cross certain paths at some point. I was just sitting down talking to somebody that said he was from Birmingham like me. Then he said what his last name was. And then I said, such and such. And he said, that's my cousin. Called him. We took a selfie, sent the picture. You know what I'm saying? They got a phone call to confirm who I was to that individual. And it just happened that quickly. You know what I'm saying? But if I never had nothing to talk about, or if he never had nothing to talk about, and there was no reason for us to interact with each other, I never would have found out I was sitting right next to the cousin of one of my old classmates. You know what I'm saying? I ain't seen probably in 30 years. So you have to have, I think as a man of value, you have to have big picture view.
Yeah, I agree.
You got to have big picture view, and everybody don't have that. But that's the difference between where your value is most effective. You might be more effective as a follower than you are a leader. How many times we done seen head coaches get promoted too soon and say that dude should have stayed a head coach or should have stayed a DC or an OC somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that they suck. They're just outside their wheelhouse,
Yeah.
And some people have resources that they don't know how to use.
Yep.
Man, how many times you done walked in somewhere and saw a piece of sound equipment, like, man, you're not even using this? I know what to do with that. Next thing you know, you got a full-on production and the other person sitting back like, man, I didn't know they could do all of that. Now they jealous.
Mm. It'd
What's
be
the
like
value of that person that's jealous? You know what I'm saying? But man, hey, let's wrap up. I want you to bring up the discussion about elevated dialogue, what people can expect tomorrow, because we're gonna talk about this topic even more in detail. This is the candid discussion, where we have, like critical thinking and dissecting, of the topic, because tomorrow we're gonna have a panel, and if each one of us spoke the way we speak over here, we'd be online for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and break down for the group where they can find us tomorrow on Elevated Dialogue, and tell them a little bit about the Uncle Junior and the Uncle Junior Network.
Oh yeah. So tomorrow, Wednesday night, Elevated Dialogue, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the topic is, what do men bring to the table? A lot of times we talking point is, men and women to go back and forth, and it end up the man to throw the card down and say, well, what do you bring to the table? So I want to flip it up a little bit, and I want to talk about, what do men bring to the table? Similar to kind of like tonight, where I think that it may be a combination of conversations and or list or different things that may go into what men bring to the table. But I think it's going to be interesting to talk about it, because it's from a it ain't what we're here to talk about a lot. We always hearing men asking women, what do you bring to the table? And then women say, well, I am the table. And then the conversation goes left. But yeah, Elevated Dialogue tomorrow, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Me, Vic, Coach, Antoine, and whoever else decides to show up.
Man, the goal is to end the debates and end the fights so we can get to a higher level of understanding. And that's what Elevated Dialogue is all about, So we have to take these cyclic topics and unpack them in a reasonable way. So rarely have I heard a conversation amongst men talking about what men believe that they bring to the table and what they believe is important. And that's why, like, the conversation about men of value is very important, first, before we go into that, because we're kind of defining, the spectrum of men that we're discussing. Everybody doesn't fit in every single conversation.
Yeah.
Like, we're veteran heavy, right? So our experiences cross certain boundaries and certain paths with each other, intertwined so well that, like, you and I sit up here, we operating off of 14 years of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And then we're still trading work with one another. And that's important, because if neither one of us had any type of value or usefulness or whatever, we wouldn't have anything to talk about. You know what I'm saying? If one of us was off par, neither one of us would be here at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Based on where we are in life, So being a man of value is an individual effort that aligns with accountable masculinity rule number 1: men focus on men. Then, after you've established yourself, then you can start talking about what you have to offer. And you got to have some intangibles in there, in order to be a man of value. And I'm kind of like wrapping up some of the notes and stuff that I was saying. So the things that came to mind, I'm going to name off some words, so some phrases as I was writing down. Tangible resources goes back to you talking about money. Sometimes you got to have money to be effective. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, at some point, money's going to be part of the conversation to be effective. but you can maintain some intellectual value. You could be an advisor, a consultant, or something like that. Just because you don't have placement and access don't mean you don't know how to do something. You just haven't had a chance to bring it to fruition, which is where resources come in to make your intellectual property something tangible. Realistic expectations. Men of value that are leaders have realistic expectations based on what the environment presents them. You can't go to Taco Bell and get mad when they don't have a T-bone steak on the menu. You can't. That's poor expectation management, you know. Along with money, like you mentioned before, and I wrote down tangible resources, things that come with that are status and influence. Everybody with status doesn't necessarily have influence. There's plenty of people with influence that have status, though. That there's a sweet spot in there. You ever heard of Steve Stout? Steve Stout was responsible for Nas's "You Can Hate Me Now." That whole run in the '90s where Queensbridge was on. Steve Stout did that. But he had a major hand in it, aside from just actually, being an artist. He wasn't an artist. He just knew all the artists were. He survived a beef with 50. He survived a beef with Puffy. This dude is not a rapper. But he put Dapper Dan in the game. He made Gucci pay their homage. You know what I'm saying? He was in the mix. So his status, placement, and access, amounted to influence. It amounted to how people valued, where he placed at, in certain networks. And then the other thing is that all of the things I mentioned, tangible resources, realistic expectations, status, and influence, they amount to power. So at some point, when you get enough of these infinity stones, your power cannot be denied. But one of these things is not the equivalent of all these things. That's just the point. So, hey man, that's all I got for Code Talk. What you got before? What you want to let the people know before we get out of here?
Just stay tuned. Tune in on Tuesdays. Tune in on Wednesdays. Tune in on Fridays.
Word. Hey, everybody that was in the chat,
learn something.
Yeah, for real. Hey man, to everybody that was in the chat actively participating, thank you for showing up. Shout out to my man Tony, Marianne Graham with her active participation. Let's see here. Who else we got on here? Chris, I know if you're still there, if you want to say something before we get out of here, now's the time. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off. 10.
Chris rolled out. He had to roll.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Well, he put it in the private chat.
And with that being said, we'll see some of y'all tomorrow when you come up on Elevated Dialogue. Hopefully, everybody tomorrow. If not, see you this time next week for Code Talk, the Accountable Masculinity platform. I'll let you.